What is the BRRRR method and why is it important? First, I want to tell you that I think it's one of the most, if not the most powerful real estate strategies there are. When you're doing the BRRRR method, you have to be very, very careful that you meet these following criteria. Property manager makes or breaks your house when it's done. A BRRRR almost always works when you beat the 1% rule, and I talk about the 1% rule all the time. 1% rule is
Thank you for watching the Real Estate Doctor podcast. If you get value from this episode, which I know you will, please hit the subscribe button, like it, comment, do your thing.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Real Estate Doctors podcast, where I'm here to educate, inspire, and entertain you. So today I'm going to talk about a subject that we love, the BRRRR method. So what does the BRRRR method stand for? It stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. It's like a tongue twister. So what is the BRRRR method and why is it important? So first, I want to tell you that I think it's one of the most, if not the most powerful real estate strategies there are. And I always use the example of it's how you can take $100,000 and recycle it and buy infinite number of houses. And some people will tell you, well, first off, where can you buy a $100,000 house? Well, that's a subject for a different podcast, but you can definitely buy a $100,000 house. But it's not the point that it's $100,000. Your $100,000 could be $100,000, $1 million, $10 million, or $500,000. You worked hard to earn your money. You worked hard for, let's say, that $100,000. Well, if you buy in the traditional method that banks have, you have to put 20 or 25% down. Let's say 20%. So if you are buying $100,000 houses, or just do the math, if you're living in California and they're $1 million houses, if you're buying $1 million houses, you have to put 20% down on every house. We will exclude closing cost for the purpose of this discussion. So if I was buying $500,000 houses, I would put $20,000 down on 5 of those houses, and I would be done. I would never be investing again. It would be all over until I worked hard, saved more money, or hit the lottery. This is a terrible strategy. This is basically like save money, invest it, and that's it. All I can have is 5 houses or 25 houses, whatever the number is that you have saved up. And I know how hard it is to save, especially these days. So the beauty of the BRRRR method is you would take that same $100,000, you would buy a house, let's say for $50,000. You would rehab it for $50,000. So same $100,000 investment. However, you will get an appraisal based on what it's worth, not what you paid for it. See, the reason the banks really, you can't leverage the banks traditionally is the banks want to see you put money in a deal. So if you're buying a house for $100,000 and it's worth $150,000, it's never going to appraise for $150,000. I can tell you what the appraiser is going to say it's worth. He's going to tell you, and with a 99% standard deviation, I will tell you that he will basically say it's either going to be worth 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, or 103. And his comps are going to justify the sales price that you have. Now, if it's really worth $150,000, you're never going to get that appraisal. But let's say you did. The bank is going to say, well, we're going to give you an 80% loan on your cost, not what it's worth. So they want you to put that 20% down or 25% down. So you're always putting money in the deal. And I get it. If you're a bank, that's great for the banks. You got some sweat, you got some skin in the game, as they say. But that's kind of stupid. Like if I'm buying a property for $150,000 and you feel comfortable with me having 20% equity, who cares whether I write the check for it or wire it or the equity is just there? So the way around it is this BRRRR method. And the BRRRR method, you would buy for $50,000 in this example, renovate it for $50,000, as long as it appraises for, let's say this example, $150,000, you'll definitely refinance. $150,000, 80% of $150,000 is, I'm having a brain fart, $120,000. So you'd actually get more money than you invested back, which you can do in the BRRRR method. Those are like what I call unicorns in the BRRRR method because you do have closing costs and this, that, and the other thing. But it is highly likely that you can get 90% to 105% of your money back in all BRRRRs. I only do BRRRRs that meet that criteria. I want all my money back so I can do it again. Why do you want all your money back? Because let's say you invest this 50-50 and you go to the bank, they appraise, and they give you a $100,000 loan back. Well, guess what? Now you own a house and you have $100,000 back in the bank. So you just go buy another one and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. So that is essentially why the BRRRR method is powerful. So let's talk about all the letters in that acronym and what is important to do while you're working on them. So for instance, buy. Buy is, some people think this is like easy. This is the hardest part of any real estate transaction, and it's where you make your most money. People think that you make money when you sell a house. It's total bullshit. You make money when you buy a house, and that's why you should negotiate. And I'm not saying you should kill people, but you got to negotiate. The answer is always no until you ask. Any money you buy that house for less than they were asking and you negotiated, you will see one day when you sell it or refinance it if you don't sell it, but you make your money when you buy. And when you're doing the BRRRR method, you have to be very, very careful that you meet these following criteria. One, you need to find a house that your total investment will be less than, how do I want to do this? Let's reverse that. You need to make sure that your appraised value will be 133% of what your investment is. So let me go back to these. I like these easy numbers. 50,000 plus 50,000 is 100,000. So times that by 133%, that means this property has to appraise for $133,000. Now, why 133? Because 133% in the worst case, if you get a $133,000 appraisal, 75% of that, that's the worst case, some banks will loan you 80, is $100,000 and you get your money back. So you might be asking the following questions, which is, one, how do I know that the property, because I didn't buy it yet and I didn't renovate it yet, how do I know it's going to appraise for $133,000? Well, it's very easy. You have to run what's called comps, comparable sales. You look around and you see, okay, I'm making a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,200 square feet. Let's look at other 3 bedrooms, 1-bath, 1,200 square feet houses and what they're selling for. And you have to really pay attention. They're like, okay, these are selling for 150, but they're high end. They got granite countertops and iron railings and blah, 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 blah. So if you want the 150 number, you need to do a high end renovation. Can you do that for that 50,000? If they're appraising for 120 as rental grade, well, then you only have to do rental grade. But you do need to pay attention to the comps, and you have to do apples to apples. So your house needs to look like the house that is your comparable property. So it is very important. This is the key point. It has to appraise for 133%. There is no way you will know that from day one. You could pay for what's called a subject to appraisal for an appraiser to appraise it before you buy it of what he thinks it'll be worth, but nobody knows what's going to happen in the future when you're done that renovation. The market could turn, this could happen, you could get a bad appraiser, but really you can get very, very high. I would say most of my appraisals, especially if you're not being overly aggressive, most of my appraisals come in where I want them to come into. So I wouldn't tell you that, you should be scared of it. If you do the proper research, you should feel very comfortable that the numbers are going to be what you expect them to be. The second thing you need to determine when you buy the property is super important, is what's the rent going to be? Now, why do you need to know what the rent's going to be before you even buy the property? Well, because you need to cash flow. It's not just so much that you get all your money back, because if I bought 100,000, if I'm buying it for 50, putting 50 in, I'm 100,000 in, and I go refinance and get 100,000 back, now I have a $100,000 investment that is worth 133. No, you have equity there too. If you do this strategy, you add 33% equity to your wealth every time you do this. But I need to make sure it cash flows, because I don't want that house if the rent is 1,000 and the mortgage is 800 and all the other expenses are 400 and I'm negative cash flow. Remember, rule number 1 with the real estate doctor is you only buy a property that cash flows. So the 2 key points you need to figure out when you buy, well, we'll make 3, is does it cash flow? So what's the rent? which you can use websites like renometer.com. And there's different websites that can show you what properties will rent for around there. And will it appraise for more by running comps? You could do that on Zillow. You don't need any crazy software. You can do that stuff for free. If you do buy some software, it does make it easier and faster to find that information. Now, the third thing you do need to do is you need to determine what the renovation is. And this is not the scope of this BRRRR conversation, but you would obviously have to, before you buy it, hire a contractor, and they're going to have to give you an estimate, or not hire them, get them to bid the property, and they're going to give you those numbers. So once you know what you're buying it for, because you put it under contract, what the renovation is, what you think it'll appraise for, and what you think it'll rent for, you can now determine that you have a good BRRRR. Now, side note, a BRRRR almost always works when you beat the 1% rule, and I talk about the 1% rule all the time. 1% rule is if you're buying a $100,000 house, the rent has to be $1,000 or more. $1 million house, the rent has to be $10,000 or more. That does not happen everywhere in the United States, and that does not happen everywhere in every market of the United States. But if it does do that, you're highly likely to get yourself a good BRRRR if it will appraise. Some markets have very good cash flow, but don't appraise well. So you got to marry those. So you got to be in the right markets. And even when you're in the right markets, I would say 1 out of 20 deals work for me. Like I'm always, I don't like I'm not going to do 20 different analysis. I have a couple shortcuts. One of the shortcuts is the 1% rule, but 1 out of 20 BRRRRs work. And anybody that tells you that they can't find a BRRRR, you can just DM me, BRRRR, I'll call you, or you want me to help you find a BRRRR, I'll tell you what states, what cities, they all work. So that's BRRRR. Now, that's buy. So that's B. The other B, or R now, so sorry guys, buy, renovate. So now we're at renovate. So you have to buy the property and you have to renovate it. So what's key when you renovate it? Well, you have to hire a contractor, and I'm not going to make this a 2-hour video. I can definitely tell you everything you shouldn't do with a contractor, but number one is if the renovation's $50,000, you do not give them $50,000 day one. You split that $50,000 into at least 4 different payments or draws, we call them in the industry. Let's say $12,500 each. You let them do each one of those, and here's another, I guess we'll call it pro tip, something it took me 15 years to learn. I don't let them send me pictures. I don't let them send me videos. All I do is have a third-party inspector in whatever city that is inspect the property for the draws. I'm not just talking about like before you buy. I have somebody that's on the ground that knows the laws, and this is why some people are like, oh, I don't want to invest far from my house because I want to be able to go check it out. Well, guess what? You don't know what the heck you're looking at. I don't know what I'm looking at. I did 8,000 deals. Yes. Do I have a general sense? Sure. But can a contractor get one over on me? I can tell you for sure. I've definitely had a bunch of contractors get them over on me, and especially if you are not right there. But even if you are there, they can still do it. So don't not pay an inspector, which will cost you between $100, $200 an inspection. Let them go inspect the property. Then these contractors know that it's not you that says yes to the money, and they have to really answer to somebody. So in the renovate part of BRRRR, so we talked about buy, in the renovate part, very important that you have a contract, that you're paying somebody in draws, and that you do, here's another pro tip, at the end, hold money back for a punch list. So if it was 12.5 times 4, hold 2,500 for a punch list. For whatever reason, I don't know why, 95% of contractors get 95% of the house done like that. And the last 5% sometimes never gets done. So hold money back for that. Also, make sure you have good contracts and you have penalty clauses for days that they are late. So that's it in a quick nutshell. So that's buy and renovate. Now we're on to rent. So how do you rent a property? Well, now you've renovated the property, it's brand new, you want to list it for rent. I recommend that you get a property manager. I really don't think anybody should be managing the properties themselves unless you are really down the street and you don't mind getting a phone call at 10 o'clock at night when you're at a 5-star restaurant on a Valentine's date. If that's what you want, then go ahead and manage your own property. But no, seriously, you should hire a property manager. The property manager will tell you, I have a whole list of questions you can ask me. I'll send it to you of what you should ask a property manager in order to qualify them, because a property manager, if you're going to do the BRRRR method, that means you're a landlord. And there's no one in this whole process that's more important than the property manager. Property manager makes or breaks your house when it's done. So get yourself a good property manager. I have a list of questions. I've had great ones. I've had terrible ones. But now I have a pretty good idea of how to qualify them. Get yourself a good property manager. Have a conversation with them. If you already have property with them, you can ask them before you buy, instead of looking at Renovate or Zillow, what do you think I can rent this property for when it's done? But simply, you buy, you renovate, and then you have a property manager or yourself rent it out. Now you have a turnkey or stabilized property that is brand new, that is rented, and now you're going to go to the bank. Now, here's a key point about the BRRRR method, and these rules change all the time. The standard rule for a long time was you could not refinance a house and use this BRRRR method and benefit from the higher appraised amount unless you own the property or it was seasoned for 6 months. That had been the standard rule for quite some time. So you would buy a property cash. Now, when I say buy it cash, you could buy it with a line of credit. You could buy it with hard money. You could buy it with whatever. You buy it for 50, you put 50 in, and let's say you finish it and rented it and it was 2 months. You're on it, right? Well, you couldn't refinance for 6 months. That was the previous rule. Now with these DSCR loans, which everybody and their mother loves, they've been around for a while anyway, there's a bunch of those people that in 3 months you can refinance. And you can get 75% of the appraised value in 3 months. So basically you can buy, renovate, rent it, and if you can do that in 2 months, you can put the property up, you can start working on the refinance in the first day of month 3, and in 90 days, you could be refinanced and have your money. And that way, the beauty of that is you can go and do 4 of these. Let's say you have 100,000. By the end of 1 year, you could have 4 properties. It's insane, insane. So the last part of the BRRRR method is repeat. So, let's say you do this work, you refinance it in month 3, you get your 100,000 back, you just go and buy another property and do it again. So, guys, this is the BRRRR method. I just want to tell you a couple key points again here at the end of the video. Try to beat the 1% rule. That's going to slow you down from looking at 100 deals to find one that works. If the whole market doesn't work for the 1% rule, you're not going to be able to do these BRRRRs. And a BRRRR that you don't get 100% of your money back is still good if you get 90 or 80% of your money back, because it's better than going to the bank and doing it conventionally. So beat the 1% rule. Have it appraised for 133% or more so you can get all your money back. Make sure it cash flows. Find yourself a good contractor. Don't pay him all the money up front. Pay him as you go. Have a third-party inspector inspect the property. Hire yourself a property manager to manage the property. And I'm telling you, get yourself a good lender that you can do the DSCR, which is debt service coverage ratio loans, and you will be good to go. You can repeat, repeat, repeat. And this is how you can take $100,000 and buy infinite houses. I hope this one was short and sweet. Everybody wants to know about the BRRRR method. So everybody, have the best day of your life. Thanks.
Hey guys, thank you for watching the Real Estate Doctor podcast. If you get value from this episode, which I know you will, please hit the subscribe button, like it, comment, do your thing.